Support for today's show comes from Microsoft Teams. That's right, Microsoft Teams. It's your hub for teamwork in Office 365. With so much to look after, wouldn't it be great if there was just one place to look? Teams, that's Microsoft Teams, is that single workspace where you can work, share, and connect with the people in your work life. Teams brings together your chats, meetings, files, and apps all in one place. Take teamwork where you work with apps for mobile and desktop. So whether you're sprinting towards a deadline, I know what that's like, or sharing your next big idea, I hope I know what that's like, Teams can help you and your team achieve even more. Microsoft Teams in Office 365. Visit office.com/teams to learn more. And now it is time for the Ringer NBA Show. What's that sound? No, it is not time for Sources Say.
Oh, no!
I'm Juliet Litman.
I'm Chris Ryan.
Oh, I'm Danny Chau.
I'm Justin Verrier.
We're not doing Sources Say because it's the Western Conference Finals. Actually, it's all the conference finals. And Game 4 just happened in Oakland. And it was a weird one. It was basically like two different games that was alternating on and off between different quarters or something. We're going to break it down. And let's begin with the final sequence of the fourth quarter. The game ended 95-92. I just want to note for the record, I predicted 105-102, so I'm feeling
Pretty
good.
close.
I'm feeling good about myself right now. Probably better than the Warriors are feeling.
I also bet anyone who would take it that $100 that the Warriors would win tonight. Nobody took me up on it.
Well,
Not a gambling man.
We fucked up. Me neither. I don't gamble. What's the point?
Yeah.
Sorry to the new laws. Let's talk about the end of the game. So the Warriors are down 3. They get a rebound. Kevin Durant brings the ball up. He passes to Clay. He gets trapped in the corner. And the Warriors have a timeout, but Steve Kerr does not call one, and they force a bad shot. And then we think the game is over, and it's not because Sean Livingston has fouled.
PJ Tucker has a nice little hand around his waist. It was a nice little touch foul.
It was Chris Paul because he took the shots at the end. The two free
Chris
throws.
Paul.
It was Chris Paul. He goes 1 for 2. And then they do call a timeout. They're down 3. And Steph Curry gets a great look and he misses. And that's the end of the game. So, first question. Should Steve Kerr have called a timeout when they got the rebound at the end when they were down 2, 94-92?
Probably. I think it's very much against the Warriors' DNA to take a timeout in that scenario. We've talked a lot about this season, how they play so free and like flowing, and everything good and bad kind of really stems from that. And that's probably why, if Kerr is going to have to answer this, is what he's going to say. But at the same time, you do have some of the best offensive players in the NBA. Maybe draw something up, especially when Clay was like clearly trapped for multiple seconds there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have called the timeout. KD had the ball in his hands. He should have just taken the shot.
Yeah, they're like in transition. Those guys are all a bunch of John Wicks. So like, why call a timeout and stop the momentum? I don't think he thought Kevin Durant was going to give it up.
Why did Kevin Durant give it up?
I'll have to ask Kevin Durant. I'm sure he'll give a really thoughtful, sensitive answer that respects the media.
Very weird Kevin Durant game tonight. Was probably his worst of the series, which is notable.
It still ended with 27 points, but it felt like he worked for every single one of them.
How many shots?
9 for 24. And I felt
not
like
the
the
KD
9 were
love.
like really, really tough mid-range shots, all of which elicited incredible reactions from us when we were watching. In some ways, there was that one fading out of bounds baseline shot he took that was just like about as hard as any dunk I've ever seen pulled off.
And it also felt like half of them were just shooting directly on top of Chris Paul's head.
Yes.
Like he rose to the height of Chris Paul on each of his jump shots.
A lot of abuse of small people over the past few days. I don't stand for that here.
I don't either.
You stand with Terry?
Absolutely.
Wherever you are, Scary Terry, Justin Verrier stands with you. What was the biggest difference for the Rockets tonight versus Game 3?
Aggression. I thought that they withstood what was, I thought, like a very, very terrifying opening few minutes where they didn't score for 5 minutes.
Yes, it was 12-0 with like 6 or 4 minutes gone by.
And it felt like they really stuck, 42 minutes for Paul, 43 minutes for Harden, 44 for PJ Tucker. They decided to play basically 6 guys. Gerald Green gave 12 minutes here to like spell some people.
Crucial 12 minutes in the second half,
For
though.
sure. And when he was in there, it was indicative of how they played tonight, which is very handsy, very lane jumping, very aggressive guarding. Like we were noting, like Capella's guarding people on switches out at the half court mark, and the Warriors just weren't able to go over the top and exploit any of the space that was left behind them. So I'm honestly, as the probably like signature Rockets hater of Ringer Podcast Network, I'm super impressed by the Rockets.
I mean, absolutely, because the Warriors had amazing runs in the first and the third, and then they came back in the second and the fourth, and then ultimately won the game. What is it about the Warriors that they just basically like take off quarters? Like it's kind of like LeBron, but it's
take off games after wins.
Yeah, take off games after wins.
I mean, as Chris was saying, it was kind of the game 7 for the Rockets. They played pretty much 6 guys, and to a certain extent 7 because Gerald Green got a few minutes in there. 12.
Shout out Gerald Green, by the way, a game high plus 14 in the game.
Nice.
And the Warriors didn't have Iguodala, which seemed to screw up the rotations to a certain degree. Jordan Bell was in there a little bit more than usual. You saw Quinn Cook for 2 minutes there. At
one point, there was a Warriors lineup in the second quarter of Kevin Durant, Swaggy P, Jordan Bell, Kevon Looney, and Sean Livingston.
And this is kind of what the Warriors do, right? They still weave in some of these unproven young guys into what they do with just a Kevin Durant or Steph Curry on the floor all the time. They just hope that that's enough to kind of power them through that. The difference here was the Rockets played their best guys pretty much every time on the court, and Chris Paul actually played like one of the best guys on the floor for once.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest difference. Chris Paul actually had a good game.
Chris Paul back. He should, because there's an argument to be made, and people have been talking about this for a couple of days, that a loss tonight would have ended the Chris Paul era in Houston. As an era, I don't know if you can call one season an era, but that they would have to give serious thought to whether or not you're going to resign a guy at that age with that injury history who has had some problems in the postseason to come back and pay him past his prime.
I'm just not here for this Chris Paul.
It's not slander. I'm just like, look at Daryl Morey, man. I mean, like, you think he's really going to pony up 35 or whatever much Chris Paul's due?
Well,
still probably shouldn't.
Yes, I don't know. Chris Paul still was one of the best players in the NBA when he was healthy this season. And I think if maybe not full max, but I think you get somewhere close to that, because when he is playing, and if it's only for 50 games, let's say, you're getting one of the best players in the NBA still.
It just look, as the resident D'Antoni disciple here.
Mythologer.
Right. I have way too many nightmares about what happened with Steve Nash to contemplate giving Chris Paul another 4 years of huge money.
Right. And he's older, and smaller point guards, as you're alluding to, definitely don't age as well. But look at what he was able to do tonight. He didn't have a particularly good offensive game. 27 points, shot 50% from 3. But what he was doing, just moving the ball and just making things happen, had a dramatic impact on the whole game.
And also compensating for Harden, who again was like kind of off.
Right.
Didn't have a great game.
What is with Harden? It feels like every point he scores takes him at least 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I believe in Chris's passion against him.
No, I totally get it. It's the way he's kind of built to play the game. He's very methodical. He's basically timing your timing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's using your timing against you. That's how he plays, and it can be beautiful and it can be completely frustrating.
Today was great because it was a clash of styles that were actually complementary. I thought the Warriors at their best in that second quarter run were doing the downhill running, were doing the stretching the floor beyond the 3-point line shooting, but the Rockets were able to chip and chip and chip and then soak up clock and kind of make the Warriors work for 23, 22 seconds per possession. And honestly, like, I don't really love speculating about rest or exhaustion any more than I like talking about refereeing. But you could see that Draymond had a little less lift at the end.
Yeah, I think there's like a couple, we should go over like kind of a couple of pivotal moments, like how worried should you be based on what you saw? Like starting at the first quarter, how worried are you about Klay Thompson? He had like a crash. He hurt his knee.
I was more worried for you.
I was really worried. I had a pit in my stomach. Didn't want to watch his Warriors team without Klay. Also, he is, I mean, Steph is their most important player, but he is way more important than Iguodala. He's way more essential to what they do than, I mean, behind Durant. I don't know. Him and Draymond are both really important. But
I think because we haven't had a Klay blackout game, that's where the worry creeps in.
Game 1 was probably the closest.
Yeah, but like there was not a point in this game, even before the injury, where you were really concerned about Klay absolutely losing it and burying 3 threes in a row and putting the game out of reach. And this is interesting because both of these teams kind of thrive on putting their foot on people's necks and kind of putting these games out of reach for the other. Mm-hmm. So it was really kind of interesting to see them not to tighten up, but like be in the unfamiliar territory of having a game that was swinging back and forth between 3-point leads back and forth.
I think they see it was more than that though. The Warriors were down 7 at the half. I think that was the Rockets' biggest
they were
lead.
up 15, I think, at some point, then down 7 at the half.
Yeah, and so it was not just like it wasn't necessarily a close game, but it was like a game of runs, which is like
Right.
the most classic basketball, I guess. But that it was weird to see them tired like midway through the fourth. I think that's sooner than you're used to seeing either of these teams play because they both blow teams out so much.
And I think that's just kind of how you have to approach every single game with Golden State. The entire objective of the defense is to kind of chip away at that margin of error that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have, Iguodala out, you have Klay Thompson a little bit compromised, you can kind of hunt Curry down because he has these 3 fouls. That gives you the kind of leeway that allows Harden to have an explosive first half or an explosive second quarter. That allows Chris Paul to come in and become a hero in the second half. And within that, you get, little bit of contributions from Gordon, Ariza. PJ Tucker had a huge rebounding performance. That's where it comes from.
Yeah,
16 boards for Tucker, 13 for Capella, yeah.
Tucker's new Draymond, essentially. I mean, you kind of alluded to it, Danny. It's just the margins are a little bit smaller nowadays, only because, yes, they do have those 3 transformative offensive players, but throughout the season, we talked about Andre Iguodala just not being there as an offensive option, and he's been pretty consistent offensively throughout these playoffs, but now you have guys like Draymond in there, he was 0 for 2 from 3. Looney isn't much of a factor on the offensive end, and you get deep into the bench, it's really just hoping Nick Young shoots well from 3, and he didn't do that tonight. And so you're really just relying on KD and Steph, and you become a little bit more predictable, and the Rockets were able to sniff them out.
This is one of those games where you look at the Warriors depth chart and you're like, why the hell do they have 4 bigs that they never use?
Yeah,
seriously.
Why didn't they get rid of one of those guys and kept Omri Caspi? This is a game where, as bad as Patrick McCaw was this season, you could have used him in that Nick Young role as a defensive guy.
Isn't he still hurt though?
Yeah, exactly. So he's out. They miss him.
Yeah, the 4 guys they didn't use on their bench today, all centers.
Yeah,
it's
the
incredible.
performance art signings that they have done, the JaVales, the Youngs, keeping David West around, I assume, for locker room stability. He played a little bit, but is obviously out of the rotation.
He was much better.
Zaza's out of the rotation. That's a lot of dead weight to be carrying. I know that it's not like D'Antoni played that many more people, but I feel like probably could have gotten a little bit from like a couple of minutes of Ryan Anderson, or if Luke had to play and they just said, don't lift your arms above your head, like he would be fine.
Just stand there.
How big is Iguodala? So are we seeing the Iguodala factor as a 3-point margin?
It just really shows that the Warriors aren't necessarily as deep as we kind of say they are. They're very top heavy.
Have people been saying that though? I think that's been a narrative this season. The Warriors are not as deep. Like this team is not as deep as the previous ones, basically.
One thing I would want to go back and check is how much Iguodala defended Paul in the first 2 games, or at the very least was able to switch on to him, was able to fluster him, because he did seem like he was able to get to his spots a little bit easier. And as we said before, like when he's able to orchestrate and Harden's able to play off of that, they're just a completely different team.
Iguodala has that low stance where he's like shoots his arms out, that also really gets in the way with what Chris Paul does, which we saw tonight with some of his amazing passes. Like the one on the baseline was incredible, but he has a way of guarding where he can go big or small and just take up all the space that they miss when he's not on the court. I also think that Draymond missed dunk just really like that one.
It was illustrative of like how exhausted that team must have been.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of shorted threes from Klay and Steph as well that I think just spoke to their level of exhaustion. It is weird to see them this tired. Like I can't really remember a Warriors team like seeming fatigued before the finals.
I think that you could make one argument that A, younger legs, and B, like back a couple of seasons ago, they were more regularly beating teams by 25, 30 points and not playing fourth quarters and maybe had a little bit more gas in the tank. I have no numbers to back that up. But I think one thing that's happening here is, and I just don't know how to get to the bottom of this, but they're not playing good twice in a row. I mean, you know what I mean? Like they obviously have moved through the first round of the playoffs pretty easily, but I feel like they are kind of coming up short after wins. And like they kind of think they've fixed it, they've got it all figured out. There was nothing about tonight though that I felt like was anything close to sort of like not there mentally, not focused. They seemed focused. They just seemed completely stymied by the Rockets' defense.
I think they also just had a couple of really bad turnovers in the fourth. Like Clay had that couple of really stupid ones. Like, did he also get a concussion when he hurt his knee or something? Not to joke about concussions. Sorry.
Of course not.
Never. But
Tell the truth. That's a concussion joke.
Great Will Smith impression. Will we be seeing you at the World Cup as well to help him sing?
Probably because I'll be fired from the Ringer for making fun of concussions.
The Warriors, like, I find this kind of annoying about the Warriors narrative, but how they always point to like how many assists, and how many passes they have. But it is true they were playing a lot more like off the dribble and in isolation tonight than previously.
I guess it comes down to how much faith do you have in the Warriors and their ability to see the big picture. Because we said this all throughout the season that while we could have hit the panic button a few times, that they were so good and they've shown so much over the course of the past couple of years that you didn't really have to worry. And now you're looking at the box score and you're saying, well, they didn't play particularly well, but they did get a lot of guys involved, whereas the Rockets, as we mentioned, only using 6 or 7 guys. I'm wondering if maybe they lost this game by a little bit, but they make it up in Game 5, in Game 6,
because the
and
Rockets
Game
are
7.
taxed?
Right. Just because the Rockets are playing Game 7 every game now, whereas the Warriors can kind of stretch it out there. I don't know.
I mean, it definitely looks like that with the lineups that Kerr's been putting out there. He's really throwing lineups he's never played in the regular season, pretty much putting, 4 non-factors on offense around Durant and just kind of like
See if you can stop the bleeding for a while.
Letting it go for about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, why not?
Maybe this is what the Rockets have been playing for all season long. I mean, this is it. They're going to get the Game 7 in Houston on Monday night, probably. They'll probably split the next 2, and they'll get this Game 7 that they won all these regular season games for, and that they kept the foot on the gas throughout the end of the season as other teams were like, well, we'll just wait till the postseason and worry about it then. They get this game in Houston, and I kind of am that's going to be one of the most anticipated games in the last 3 or 4 years in the NBA.
D'Antoni has to get it.
Yeah.
He has to get it. Like,
You're
like,
giggly.
I'm grinning ear to ear right now. It's just one day D'Antoni's methodology of putting 7 guys on the court, and that's it, is going to work. Depth is one day.
Depth is alive.
Yeah, depth is
alive.
alive.
Depth is for the regular season.
It's for all seasons. I'm ready. Let's go.
I feel like there's going to be a game where someone from the depths of the Rockets bench just like comes through and wins it for them. Like I'm waiting for the Joe Johnson
The rising
game.
of Joe Jesus?
It would be perfect like circle for the Suns and Danny in particular for a Joe Johnson comeback game.
If Joe Johnson didn't break his orbital bone in 04-05.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
All right.
He was so he was a backup point guard then. He's a backup power
story
forward
time.
now.
D'Antoni story time with Danny Chau.
No, but there are a lot of
Dare to
guys
dream.
there. I mean, they have Nene. They have guys that could do things. So if this does, I'm almost like...
This is absurd. He's not playing Nene. Like, that's completely ridiculous. And also, this series hinges on Kevin Durant. I mean, that's ultimately the bottom line, right? Because, like, if Curry does the first and the third, Durant has to take the second and the fourth, particularly the fourth. And he just had a horrible fourth quarter. Like, a bunch of really bad shots. The ones that we're used to seeing him make. Like, I love to dream this dream with you about ISO Joe coming off the bench for one beautiful quarter. But if Kevin Durant makes, like, 3 of those shots, like, it's kind of, I think the question is, how likely is it that Kevin Durant will have an off night for the next 2 out of 3 games?
Right. The Warriors lost by 3.
Right.
It's not like they lost by
And they usually won't
12.
have 16 turnovers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I hope so. How many assists do they have?
14.
14 assists isn't enough for them to win, right? They like to get like a minimum of 20.
Jonathan Sharks wrote for Tuesday about this basic math problem that the Rockets face every night. They know they can depend on Harden and Paul for at least 50, 60 points. Where's the other offense going to come from? Because you need to have at least one more person to make up the point differential for the 4 or 5 guys who can potentially put that up for the Warriors.
Right, and Gordon has been that key guy that Sharks has been talking about for weeks now, and he was awful at times.
Yeah.
There were just times where I had no idea if he was spasming out of control or trying to get to the basket or what he was doing. He hit enough from the perimeter and got enough shots at the basket to make it worth it. But I do wonder if you do get some more from those ancillary guys in the Warriors, it almost cancels out that, and all of a sudden we're looking at another blowout.
It's so interesting to watch like the tenets of certain organizational philosophies, whether you want to call it Morey ball or even some of the ball movement, post Spurs stuff that the Warriors like to run. That's also in itself borrowed from older D'Antoni teams. Watch that stuff crumble in the playoffs a little bit. Like the Rockets were kind of hunting for open man 3-pointers, but at the same time, we're like, but we have these driving lanes. Should we just take them?
Right.
And the Warriors, like, were really forced into. I want to see the shots here, but I'm looking at their shot chart right now. That's a fair amount of mid range.
There's quite a few.
And like, I think the Rockets are kind of like, we're gonna guard you way out and we're gonna guard you down low, and you can do as much turnaround fadeaway jumpers as you want, and we'll take our chances. And you know what? Clay didn't hit those tonight.
Yeah.
And Kevin hit a couple for the highlight reel, but probably missed a few as well. So I think it's really fascinating to take away what the teams want to do. And tonight the Rockets got more of what they wanted to do.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about them and the Warriors too. We haven't even talked about James Harden. But first, let me tell you about ADT. Is your home an ADT home? Get ADT and help protect against break-ins, fire, and carbon monoxide. For a limited time, get ADT's lowest rate starting at just $28.99 a month from the most trusted name in home security. That's just $1 a day. ADT is the first security company to help keep you safe at home and when you're on the go with the new ADT Go app. Not to mention, ADT Go also offers a family locator, private messaging, automatic check-ins, and safe driving reports. It even includes an SOS button with a 24/7 emergency response. And you get ADT Go with the purchase of any security system. Yes, any security system. So go to ADT.com/podcast to take advantage of ADT's lowest rate. That's ADT. It's tested, it's trusted, it's proven. With 36-month monitoring contract, early termination and installation fees apply, excludes taxes and fees. Applies to traditional services only, certain markets excluded. Licenses available at ADT.com. And now, back to the show. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about James Harden. What's going on with him? Weird night tonight from Harden. He had like a couple of nice shots, but in general, a quiet night for him. It was really the Chris Paul game. Is he like a part of the Warriors' problem of not playing 2 games in a row in the playoffs? What is his deal? It's a very open-ended question.
I don't know. I keep falling back to the defensive plays that he made in the second quarter. I was just like, this is so uncharacteristic of him. And yet, you look at him and you're like, this guy should be a fairly good defensive player. He's 6'5", 6'10" wingspan, strong body. You know, it's sometimes all about focus. And there were a few plays where he was on Steph where he was just completely locked in. And when you see that, you're just like, okay, I get it. I get why this guy is an MVP candidate. I get all of it. But it just never sticks around for longer than, you know, a 3-4 minute stretch.
He was oddly passive early on, at least comparatively to his first couple of games against the Warriors. And I almost wonder if he got burnt too early in that second game and decided to maybe like recalibrate when he's like distributing his effort, kind of almost like Chris Paul has been known to do.
The classic, the Jordan 6 points a quarter. And then ramp it up in the fourth thing, yeah.
Right, because he took 6 shots, which seems low for him in the first quarter, and I almost felt like he was picking his spots, and it actually ended up working in the end because he seemed like he had an extra burst. Like you mentioned, Danny, he was getting his hands all over the ball as the game kind of went along.
Yeah, I think that, you know, he and Paul are so interesting to me because they're playing with such a heavy narrative weight on them, whether or not they would want to acknowledge that or not. But certainly is for us. As soon as they started with 7-0, we were like, this is a wrap, chokers, other things like having to do with razors.
Thanks for bringing this up. The most inexplicable moment, way more than Steve Kerr not calling a timeout or whatever, was Harden passing up a completely wide open 3 in the open court in the first quarter. That was really, really weird and just speaks to, I don't even know what it speaks to because it's such he's not an alpha. Like he is an aggressive, dominant player, but that was the most passive any player has been in this series. It was so strange, and that kind of like flip-flopping
so
that he
if Steph
does
passes that shot up or Steph misses a couple of threes, it's his knee or he's going to shoot himself into it. But with Paul and Harden, they're just going to have to play until they beat the Warriors or whoever. They're going to have to play with the whispers in the background about like not being able to come up in a big game. And they were huge tonight.
Seriously. What do you think was the turning point of the game, if you could name one?
Well, I mean, I think they were already back in it by then, but Harden's dunk, Harden's facial on Draymond was a real, like, Green is kind of the sheriff of that building. and he's such the emotional engine of that team, and he feeds off the Oracle, and the Oracle feeds off him. That was a little bit of a slaying the dragon moment, I think. Not to put too fine a point on it, but I thought it was like a real, like, we're not going to be you're not going to beat us by 30 and we're going to go home and try to win this in Houston moment.
Right. The tidal wave from the Warriors is always going to come, and it usually comes in that third quarter. And I thought them being able to withstand and punch back is always going to be the crucial part of the game. And they did it better than they had perhaps this entire series. I just look at what they've been able to do there, and we talk about like narrative weight and whatnot. I mean, I think that was a good sign just going forward that they weren't able to just like kind of get taken out of it because they had it earlier in the series.
I would say, and this is a completely Danny Chau answer, but there were a couple rebounds that PJ Tucker had where I was just like, okay, the Rockets absolutely want this.
Yeah. Out rebounding like 2 or 3 Warriors who were standing and looking at a Karam off the rim.
I think also Curry taking Curry out in the second when they were up 38-36, and then because Curry had 3 fouls. That probably also, I think, if you go into the halftime with less than 7, I think it's just you come out of it slightly differently.
Yeah,
as well.
In that final 5 minutes of the second quarter, the Rockets went on a 17-8 run with Curry out.
Yeah.
Looney getting 5 too.
Yes.
Definitely did not help. He was making a difference.
He looked a little
on that
shaken up too after he did the hip plant. Like he got kind of like flipped over a little bit.
Yeah.
So that'll be a huge thing to watch for. Iguodala health, Klay Thompson health, Tristan Thompson health. I'm always checking in on that. And Kevon Looney.
My least favorite narrative of I do not want the Rockets to go to the finals. My least favorite narrative of the postseason is the Tristan Thompson revival. I just can't get down with it. It's very rough. Let's talk about Boston and Cleveland in a second, looking ahead. But first, for if Iguodala's still out for Game 5, do you stick with Looney if you're Steve Kerr, or do you try Jordan Bell? I
thought the Looney lineup looked great in the first quarter.
Yeah.
I really enjoy watching Jordan Bell. It's a very tough assignment for him to be guarding James Harden.
So much swag.
All the way out, like 25 feet out.
Looney does a pretty good job. He shuffles with him pretty well. As well as you can expect someone who has been in the league as long as he has, which is not very long, and so much bigger.
I would personally just would rather not lose a series because I played Nick Young too much.
Sure.
And for as much as I think he's amusing, -14 tonight, 1 for 3, 0 for 2 from behind the arc, didn't really look any more focused than he ever looks while playing, and just seemed like
he got burned pretty
what
bad.
What are you doing here, man?
Rotations.
Yeah.
What about Livingston starting small?
I'd be okay with that. I don't think there's any real huge adjustment that they need to make. Just Kevin Durant needs to make more than 9 shots.
Yeah.
And probably take that last one.
Maybe just go to him in isolation more often than they even have been. I mean, it seems like they still want to try to fit Kevin Durant into what they do, as Danny wrote this morning. But at a certain point, just let him loose. Just say, go win us a game.
Sure. Let's do some predictions. And then we're going to talk about DeMarcus Cousins as well. First, Western Conference Finals. Justin, what is your prediction for this best of 3 that we have coming?
I flip-flopped a lot this series, mostly because the Warriors just have a way of just stamping out the life in certain fandom. But I think Warriors in 7. I still can't go against what they have.
Danny?
Warriors in 6.
Ooh. Tough.
Interesting. Chris?
Warriors
Sorry,
in 6.
Tony.
I'm going to go
6.
Rockets in 7.
Okay.
I've thought this since like February, basically. I'm going to stick with it.
That doesn't feel good, does it?
No, it's horrible. I don't want it to be true, but this is what I feel inside of my soul. Tomorrow, probably tonight, if you're listening to this podcast, Game 5 in Boston. Let's make some predictions there, Justin.
I don't know what to think about this series anymore. I think that the Celtics will have a significant advantage because they're back at home, and it seems like these teams only play well at home. But it seems like the Cavs have found something over the past 2 games that they just didn't have over the first 2, which in large part is taking advantage of the smallest guy on the court and just shooting over him anytime possible. I think the Celtics will win one of the next 2 games if this goes 6, but I think ultimately the Cavs will win 2 of the 3.
Danny?
You said it all, I guess. Cavs in 7.
The LeBron game, we have a Tom Kane who works with us is from Boston, and he was like sort of shaking talking about LeBron coming back to Boston and LeBron victories past there. That's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I just don't know if the Cavs have any consistent help for him. Like you could just let LeBron have 52. I just don't even know whether I honestly just don't know if they have enough to win on the road.
LeBron's averaging a triple-double for the playoffs.
Sure.
It's crazy. Yep. That's so insane. He's 33.
I guess the counter is like, do the Celtics have enough consistent offense to like make that matter? Because it hadn't the past
at home.
2
They
games.
do, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm
again.
curious to
2
see.
games at home. I mean, we could possibly have a Boston-Houston finals that's determined by home court advantage in the conference finals, and it's a really good case. What?
I'm good with that.
And it's a really good case for playing through the end of the regular season.
That would in some ways be, I mean, I'm sure the league is not rooting for Boston, Houston, but in some ways it would be nice for like messaging the importance of the regular season.
Sure.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose. Let's talk about a little free agency and forecasting for the future. A lot going on with DeMarcus Cousins. And like, not in a good way.
Yeah.
He's wearing sweatsuits and like working out. So does it hurt or help his stock that his off-season home is in Las Vegas?
I don't think it could help. But I think
I mean, it's the home of USA basketball.
Counterpoint.
Though.
It's the home of Stanley Cup finalists, the Las Vegas Golden Knights. It's a new sports mecca.
Right.
There's lots of things going on in Vegas besides debauchery.
From what I've heard from my colleague Kevin Clark, it's a lovely place to live.
Is it?
Also, let me just say this. As someone who we're all working lots of hours through these playoffs, I feel I'm letting myself go. So I can only imagine how I would feel if I had a torn Achilles and I wasn't able to get any exercise. So I think DeMarcus is like letting himself. What do you guys want him to do? Like Stairmasters?
He was
Swim,
doing
dude.
Pilates.
Swim?
Today.
Is that what you just said?
Yeah. Get in the cold tub.
They're getting there like Matt Biondi, just do some butterfly.
Can't you do like the water running thing?
Yeah.
I can't think of the
water
name.
size.
Shredding?
Yeah. No, not treading. Like it's like
Aqua size.
Yeah, aqua size.
Aqua
Listen,
size.
he didn't go to Coachella. He's just hanging out and he's just trying to get back on the right path.
Is that shots at people who did go to Coachella?
I'm not a big Coachella person.
But I mean, like
surprises
NBA
you
players that went to Coachella.
Did they?
Oh yes, you didn't see like Courtney Lee's plane pics?
No, I feel like they do a good job of hiding this sort of stuff. Or maybe I'm not
from
looking
Juliet.
at it.
No. They don't do a good job of hiding it.
Well, speaking
Took
of
me like
which,
5 seconds when I heard about Nick Stauskas having a girlfriend in law school to find her. So
well, I mean, Cousins in particular hasn't done a good job of hiding his emotions
Yeah.
on the gram.
thank you for bringing that up.
Right.
He like, keeps liking all these comments about like you better just get paid. And I don't know. I don't think that's a good strategy.
Can we take all the guys who people are treating their contract status as toxic and put them on Seattle? So can we do Boogie, Blake, Chris Paul, and even Westbrook, and put them all like Seattle can only have like these 5 guys and then like a bunch of D-leaguers, but like they have to pay the $250 million salary hit.
Like a Isle of Dogs for ranted contracts.
If you guys don't want him, if New Orleans doesn't want Cousins and Houston doesn't want to sign up Paul, let's just put him on Seattle.
It'd be a good team.
It'd be so fun. Blake, Boogie, and Chris Paul again.
I'd move to Seattle.
You would?
I really like Seattle. I'm a big Pacific Northwest type of guy.
Me too. I love it.
Okay. I don't see
I'm out on
Boogie there.
Rain.
What's that?
I'm out on Rain.
You're out on Rain. Are
Yeah.
you in on Boogie and paying Boogie a max?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
You don't give older centers who coming off an Achilles injury the max.
I honestly wouldn't give any player coming off an Achilles a max, no matter who it was. Like, I just don't trust that injury at all.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway of all of this stuff, which really boils down to a few likes and unfollows, is that it seems like the Pelicans might be willing to play hardball, which we didn't assume a few weeks ago. We just assumed that because they were so cap-strapped that they were going to give Boogie whatever he wanted, basically like what they did last offseason with Drew Holiday. But it seems like they're in a position now, because they played so well and because the market is thinning for centers. I think Zach Lowe said the other day that there's maybe like 2 other teams that might be interested, that he might not be able to get what he's looking for from anywhere.
It's dumb GM musical chairs, and right now it feels like we're maybe running out of the chairs. Like it's like there's not that many people out there who would make the mistake. So that's going to change the market. And I think that if New Orleans can get really creative, maybe they can upgrade a couple of the things that they have around Davis, and then you just say, okay, Drew and Davis, let's just see how far you can get. Maybe next year we get a better seed, we get a better path. we don't hit the Warriors in the second round and grab a Spurs or a Thunder or a Wolves matchup and take it from there. Should we talk about Cat?
Sure.
Yeah.
I believe Zach Lowe
With Windy.
and Brian Windhorst reported that the Wolves and Karl-Anthony Towns are not in a good place
Internally.
First question, who leaks that? Which side? CA or the Wolves?
Well, there was also the other story. It was the story about about Tibbs flipping out at like a weird event.
Did he like throw a chair or something?
Was that true
The
though?
story was that he threw like a computer through a window, and it turned out not to be true. But it's definitely something I want to be true more than anything.
Okay, so who leaks the Cat story? It's a great question.
I think that the Wolves leak that, is my opinion, because I don't really know what Towns has to gain coming off of a kind of underwhelming season. I mean, tonight, Reggie Miller, I think, said, it might have been Chris Webber, I can't remember, said that Capella outplayed Karl-Anthony Towns in the previous round, or the first round. That's an indictment. Capella is good, but he was a project. Karl-Anthony Towns was a number one pick.
I mean, he's at best also a third option.
Yeah. And Towns should be your number one.
You're
He
a
was in the
generational superstar.
Yeah.
Maybe.
He was in the unicorn conversation for a long time, and now he's definitely out of it.
It definitely seemed like the Kentucky alumni group chat sprang to action after that happened too.
Yeah, so, and then the other piece to this is that Towns, there was pictures of him wearing Booker's jersey.
His Phoenix jersey.
Were from a while ago, apparently, but Towns recently liked them.
Yes.
What the fuck are we doing with our lives?
Man, I live on this kind of stuff. It's fine. And then that was like tweeted out, and Booker responded with the eyes, and then Zach LaVine also like jumped in the fray as well, because he was like Towns' good friend before he got traded. So, I don't know. Zach and Bill talked about it, and Zach, I believe, said no. The Wolves do not trade Towns. But like, what do you do with a malcontent former unicorn who's like just now a regular tall basketball player?
I'm following the story very intently because the introduction of Jimmy Butler into the Baby Wolves mix is very much something that could be a Sixers situation if they go off and try to get an all-star to join Embiid and Simmons. And
You know who'd be a horrible influence on the Sixers? Jimmy Butler.
Care to expand on that?
No, I just don't think that the teams he's played on seem particularly happy.
Yeah.
Except for Team USA.
Prickly personality. But that's the thing. Like, Paul George isn't known to be that person. Kawhi isn't known to be that person.
Kawhi also may have basically just like sat out a season because he was not happy about something. I mean,
Kawhi comes with the Uncle Dennis tax too. It's a whole different ballgame.
I think the issue is that all the issues are compounded because you have Tibbs just grinding away at everyone on top of everything.
Yeah, but even before Tibbs, it was like Glenn Taylor being like, I want to look Andrew Wiggins in the eye and make sure he means it and wants it. It's like, I don't think that this has been a really... I don't think they have brought along these guys quite that well. I don't think the Jimmy thing wound up helping as much. You have to think that they would probably have been in line for the 8th seed if Jimmy Butler hadn't been there. I mean, obviously Jimmy Butler, when they were all playing together in the earlier part of the season, they got to the 3rd seed.
Listen, Wiggins was also like reportedly unhappy with his touches this year. They brought in Derrick Rose, who is not like the locker room guy, and also took away minutes from Teague and whatever. Or not from Teague, but from,
They brought in the Tibbs' Hogan's Heroes. They had Jamal Crawford out there chucking. I mean, it was like, this was like such a weird
and
team.
Taj, yeah. I mean,
it's like this Frankenstein vets who've played for Tibbs before.
That's just not fixable. Like that, I don't know how you solve that. Tibbs will have to go at some point.
Yeah, my takeaway is just like, this isn't a very happy-go-lucky, sensitive workplace environment.
Right.
And I think those sort of things are just going to grind on people. And I also wonder, long-term, if all of these guys fit together. I mean, Wiggins' biggest issue, on top of all of Wiggins' issues, is that he's a bit too duplicative with Butler. And if you're going to shade with any of them, it's going to be Butler, because Butler is actually producing.
Aren't we getting through this Eastern Conference Finals and being like, oh, it's so amazing how Boston has all these interchangeable, like, rangy wings? I mean, like, wouldn't Butler and Wiggins, at their best, be, like, the best version of Tatum and Brown?
Sure, yeah, but I guess the issue there is that those guys all try 100% of the times. I mean, Wiggins' issue is so crazy because it seems like he has all the talent in the world. He just needs to use it.
Yeah. Tatum and Brown are both much better than Andrew Wiggins.
I love Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown's better than
He
Jason
seems like
Tatum.
an incredible hang, too.
Yeah.
My take is I think this is overstated. I think he got some really good press, and everyone's like, Jaylen Brown, yes, let's go. But I don't have any evidence.
Because you don't have any aggressive opinions about Jason Tatum's coolness.
I don't think Jason Tatum's cool. I just really enjoy watching him play basketball. Jaylen Brown had one really good Guardian article about him, and a Wikipedia page that like suggests that he speaks 5 languages. There's no evidence of that.
And an incomprehensible like social media handle.
Yes. It's like, it actually, it stands for faith with challenges. Like, it's some like weird.
It's too much.
It's not weird. It's just like some long like personal motto. But I'm just saying Jaylen Brown like gets a pass in the media because everyone read the same article and was like, that guy's cool.
We got to take Jaylen Brown down a peg or two. He's been coasting too long.
He's really good. And also I respect how hard he's like, you know, changed his game and made himself a great NBA player. But I'm just saying, show me more than one article. Give me some interviews that prove this.
Is there a single good Jason Tatum interview?
No, but also no one's like, that guy's so smart, would love to hang out with him. And I'm also the first one to be like, no, I don't want to hang out with him. I'd love to talk to you about his child, though.
You were first. You were first.
It's fine. It's totally fine.
I think Jalen's the type of guy who wouldn't contribute a lot to Slack, but he would jump in the national affairs one like once a month and say something really like profound and poignant. You'd be like, yeah.
And then he would leave the Slack.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
It would be a mic drop.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Totally. Let's end this podcast on an emotional heat check.
Can I ask you one question? Which
Sure.
Celtic would you most want to be in a Slack channel with?
Al Horford, no question. First of all, he wouldn't Slack that much, so like wouldn't be annoying. And second of all, I have a crush on him.
I would want to be in a Slack channel with Marcus Smart. High energy.
It's got to be Terry. Terry's just saying whatever the fuck comes to his
because
mind.
Terry would only be like, buy my shirt. Check out my meme.
That's us, though.
That's a good point. Marcus Smart would be a good one. Al Horford, I'd like to have dinner with, but Marcus Smart, maybe we could text.
Yeah.
Slack.
What was your last question?
Finally, I'd like to end on an emotional heat check for you, Chris Ryan. This is not the Heat Check podcast, but how do you feel about your 1B franchise player vacationing at the Atlantis Resort, which is really, really cheesy, yet expensive, with the minority owner credited with bringing Meek Mill to Game 3 of the previous round, Michael Rubin?
Getting some Robert Parra vibes from Michael Rubin.
Okay.
Would love for him to not... Remember when Robert Parra played one-on-one with Tony Allen during the playoffs, even though Tony Allen had like a hamstring strain? Just don't want Joel playing basketball in flip-flops. I think he should have like cooler, more wide variety of friends. I think that there's probably better places to stay than Atlantis, although if Atlantis wants to comp me to find out how cool it is, I'm open to it.
There's a Mary-Kate and Ashley movie set at the Atlantis. That's all you need to know.
Okay, so I mean, but you know, the thing is Joel's out like drinking pictures of Shirley Temples and hanging out with Justin Bieber. He's not the coolest guy in the world.
So my take on this is I don't think it's that bad. I think the Atlantis thing is kind of embarrassing, but I just think of all of the places that your superstar with a history of injury could be, this is really not that bad.
I also just want to say that him trying to like clown Aaron Baines when the Celtics beat the Sixers is loser shit. And he should be above that.
It's true.
Like Man Bun lives to get dunked on. It's like Aaron Baines is like playing pretty well in the Eastern Conference Finals, and he's not.
He's very useful on his team.
Yeah.
Can I give you my conspiracy theory on the Michael Rubin stuff?
Yes.
Sure. I think Joel reads the blogs and he sees that LeBron might be coming to the Sixers. And Embiid knows that if LeBron comes, the spacing might not be great. He might not be able to take a few more threes than he's used to. Maybe he and Ben Simmons, one of them ends up getting traded. So he rubs up to Michael Rubin and is like, listen, we don't need LeBron. You just got to keep us together. And
so you think this is the Whisper campaign?
I think so.
That's interesting. Huh. I don't know.
Who do you think wants? You think Embiid definitely wants LeBron less than Simmons?
Oh, 100%. Embiid gets traded if LeBron comes.
I don't know about that.
He does.
I really don't. He is so popular in Philly.
If LeBron comes to your team and he has there aren't that many clutch clients in the league, and so like 2 of them are on the same team, you think they're going to trade away one of them?
Guys, you just make it work. They're both on.
Yeah,
they're both on.
Why do we have to?
Right now.
What's the point of getting LeBron if you have to trade one of these guys?
I don't want to make this darker than it needs to be, but we don't know if Embiid's going to be healthy again.
He's fine.
Is there indication he's not healthy?
No, but I mean, just because he was healthy for one season doesn't necessarily mean he'll be healthy.
One season does not a career make.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Yep, exactly.
That's what I thought. Well, everyone, this has been a lively, special Tuesday night Wednesday morning for some NBA Ringer NBA show. Come back tomorrow night, Wednesday, for group chat. I won't be here. You probably won't miss me, though. And, of course,
Sell yourself short.
on Friday, we got Draft Class. And on Sunday nights, we got Heat Check. And I think we're headed for 2 Game 7. So that means there's a game every day for the rest of time.
The rest of my life.
Or at least until next Monday. Thanks for
Juliet.
listening. What?
Bachelorette back.
Oh, yes. And The Bachelorette, one of the television shows I cover, is coming back on Monday. You can listen to Bachelor Party. First guest, David Jacoby of ESPN. And many more guests to come. It's going to be a great season.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Do you guys have any personal announcements before we go?
I got to go edit a blog.
I actually will say, on The Bachelorette this season, there is a professional dunker. He is also a body double for like Donovan Mitchell in his Adidas commercials.
Do you think he gets farther than the Pro Football Focus guy?
No, I don't. I think that this gentleman, Chris Staples, gets out rather early, which hopefully means he'll be on my podcast soon.
Wow.
Dare to dream.
Yes. Thanks again for listening. Listen to the Ringer NBA show all week. And thanks again to ADT and Microsoft Teams.
And Big Ev!
Anything is possible.